Hey, Christine. Good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. So glad that you're here. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Keys to the Kingdom. I'm Marissa. Tonight, we are going to do something a little bit different. I thought it would be fun to watch this interview and kind of talk about it together. Hey, Gina. Hi, Linda. Thank you for being here. So glad you guys could make it. So, before we start the video, I have to preface something before we start discussing it. This is going to be a little controversial. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be weighty. It's going to challenge a lot of your thought processes. If you are a person that is easily terrified of end times, if you're a person that's easily terrified of what's coming on, coming to this world as far as what we know is supposed to happen in the end, if that's you, you probably are not going to want to watch this, because you have to be able to take information and still have faith. But if you're already a very anxious person in regards to the last days and what's going to happen, it might be difficult for you to take in a lot of this information. Hi, Megan. Thank you for being here. God bless you. God bless you too. So I just want to kind of preface that before we start the video, because it's heavy, deep information, and some of it is going to, it doesn't bother me. The end times, the end days, the tribulation has never bothered me. In fact, for some weird, strange reason, I don't know why, it excites me. Like, I get excited because I feel like this is God's grand finale. And even though there's a lot of evil, like obviously that part I don't like. I don't like evil being able to prosper or do anything really, but I don't know. I can't explain it. I get excited about it because it's the end and we know what happens after the end. And again, I feel like God's presence is going to be with us in such a way, on a much more profound level during these last days or years, these last years, whatever they are. So I just want to say, this video is not to instill, it's not to scare you. It's to prepare you. It's not to make you into an overthinker. I'm not trying to create, worry warts. I'm not trying to create conspiracy theories. Let's just call it what it is. I'm not trying to create conspiracy theories, but I do want to discuss them. Okay? I do want to discuss them. So William Cooper wrote the book, Behold a Pale Horse. Okay, can you see this book here? Behold a Pale Horse. It's a very thick book. No, I'm not giving this away because I don't have any copies. I'm sorry. But he wrote this book, Behold a Pale Horse. If any of you did any amount of research prior to this video, you pretty much know where I'm going with this. Hey, Renee. Oh my gosh, so thankful that you're here. Thanks for being here, darling. Soila, thank you for being here. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. I'm so glad you could make it. Yeah, she says, knowledge is so we can pray over our mind and guard our hearts. Thank you for being obedient to God. Yeah, it's a controversial, there's going to be a lot of controversial topics. But again, I'm not trying to create conspiracy theories. but I want to discuss them. I want to discuss things that I feel are necessary or worth discussing or worth questioning. Again, I'm not trying to get you to look over your shoulder every 5 seconds and always be in fear. And if you're mature enough to take in information and still have faith in God, then you're going to be able to discuss things like this. But there are some who are not. So I have to just put this disclaimer before we watch this video. Hi from the Philippines, Montiveros. Wow, thank you for being here all the way from the Philippines. So, who was William Cooper? William Cooper was he was in the Navy. He was in the United States Naval Intelligence Briefing Team. Okay? And he was able to see a lot of classified information. So what he's discussing in this video is a lot of the information that's in this book. He puts a lot of documents in this book. And the thing I love about William Cooper is he's not a sensationalist. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Alex Jones or his talk show. If you don't know who Alex Jones is, he kind of like was at the tail end of William Cooper's life, because William Cooper was actually killed by a police officer. And Alex Jones kind of like jumped on that bandwagon and started this truth movement, but he's very sensational. He likes to rile people up. He likes to get them all emotional, fear, and this is how he, I guess, makes his money, or, draws people's attention, is by instilling a lot of fear. William Cooper's not like that. He's very level-headed. He looks at the facts and he looks at them very objectively, but he questions. And if you're like me, there's a part of you that needs to have a healthy questioning when it comes to anything in your world, but mostly when it comes to the media, when it comes to our government and things of this nature. No, not everything is a conspiracy theory, but there are things that I think that are important to address, because Yeshua says, do not be deceived several times in the book of Revelation. In the Newer Testament. He says, do not be deceived. Several times he warns us not to be deceived, because it's possible that we could be deceived. That's why he was telling us that. That's one reason why I wanted to watch this. The second reason, or in conjunction with that reason, yesterday we just observed the remembrance of 9/11, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with what happened on 9/11. Christine said he's a sellout. Yes, Alex Jones kind of is a sellout. Kind of. So you're very familiar with him, I guess. A little bit, yeah. Yesterday we observed 9/11. I don't know how many of you are aware of what happened on 9/11, or remember what happened on 9/11, or put more thought into what actually happened on 9/11. But yesterday we observed the remembrance of 9/11. And because I'm doing this video on Facebook, and Facebook likes to censor everything, I'm just going to pose questions to you to get you thinking. On 9/11, 2 planes knocked down 3 buildings. How is that possible? And I'm posing this as a question because I'm not spreading false information that Facebook would like to censor, I'm sure. And I don't want to go against community standards. So I'm going to pose this as a question. On 9/11, these are facts. These are facts. 2 planes knocked down 3 buildings. How does that happen? Even if 2 planes knocked down 2 buildings, how does that happen? It doesn't. Okay? The second question is, well, let's just leave it at that, because if I keep going, we'll never get this is a very long video that we have to watch, but I'm just posing that question to you so that you'll get your mind thinking, okay? Such a topic to dig deeper into, mind-blowing, the deception, Christine said. Yes. The deception. You know, there is a quote, and I believe it was Hitler who said it. Hitler said, the bigger the lie, the easier it is to believe it. The bigger the lie, the easier it is to believe it. And yeah, Soila, there was a third building. It's World Trade Center 7, Building 7. Just Google in YouTube, World Trade Center Building 7. Building 7 was never hit with a plane. And it fell down into a blueprint perfectly, as did the other buildings. The other buildings did not, the other buildings didn't crumble. They didn't topple. No, they all fell perfectly into their own footprint. And I've been studying this and trying. There was a season that I was telling everybody about what happened on 9/11, but eventually you just get like tired and exhausted and you just don't even talk about it anymore. What was stored in that building? Oh, I'll let you do the research on that. What was stored in World Trade Center Building 7? Look that up. Here's another question. Who took out an insurance policy on the World Trade Center complex, which was all three of the buildings that fell? Who took out an insurance policy practically right before 9/11 happened? Linda said gold. Yes, you're very close. That's Goldstein. I'm so glad that you guys know about this information. Silverstein, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Silverstein. Larry Silverstein. Thank you, Linda. Larry Silverstein is the one who took out an insurance policy on the World Trade Center 7, World Trade Center complex right before it happened. I saw the video yesterday about the third building. I remember that day so clearly. Yes, it's very sad. And yep, also easy to find when you start digging. Oh, all the information's out there. That's the thing. Everything that we're gonna see in this video that William Cooper's talking about, mind you, this video that I'm showing you, this is from the early 90s. This is like 92, okay? This has been going on for many years. But everybody forgets because we're so distracted, because we have TVs and phones and lives and nobody cares. Everybody wants to talk about stupid things like the Secret Housewives, or what's it called? I don't even know what it's called. Something Housewives. You know, meaningless stuff like that. And it's designed that way for a purpose. If you go to Methodical Deception, Come the Lady Break It Down, connects to Cheney. Oh yeah, Cheney was part of it. There's many pieces. But let's go ahead and see what else William Cooper has to say in this video. So I'm going to play some, and then I'm going to stop it at parts that I want to discuss because it's fun to discuss it. All right, so let's go ahead and start the video. This is the beginning of the interview with William Cooper. Okay, here we go.
Yes, I am. Scott, you're set?
Yes.
Bill, you ready?
Yep. Bill, well, thanks for agreeing to the interview. First of all, a little bit about your background. You had extensive military service for many years prior to 1970, where a certain aspect of that military service kicked upstairs, so you were able to see certain things that you were not able to see beforehand. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
It actually started much longer in my past than that. I was reared in a military family. My father's an Air Force colonel. He's retired now. He was a command pilot. And as a child, I remember sitting around I remember the pilots at our house sitting around the kitchen table talking about their exploits in the cockpit. And what they had seen in the skies, and some of that talk involved UFOs and what some of them call Foo Fighters. And I traveled all over the world, lived on military bases for most of my life. I was really an indoctrinated individual, you might say. I was as establishment as you could get, as gung-ho, pro-government, pro-America, pro-military. And that's why I went into the military, because that had been so much of my life. I went into the Air Force. I was in the Strategic Air Command for 4 years as an aircraft and missile hydraulic technician, which is, I worked on the pneumatic and hydraulic systems of B-52 bombers, KC-135 aircraft, and Minuteman missiles. I had a secret security clearance. That's where I saw my first atomic bomb. I mean, we worked around in these planes, especially the ones on the alert pad, were always loaded, ready to go drop these bombs at a moment's notice. But while I was in the Air Force, I met sergeants, men who were older than me, and had been in the Air Force for quite a while, told me that they had participated in projects that had recovered crashed extraterrestrial craft, what we call UFOs. And they never told these stories unless they had quite a bit to drink. So I never really believed it. I thought, well, these guys are running a scam on me, even though I'd heard about these things when I was a kid. I just still didn't believe in them. They're just so far out in left field, it's not something that you really give any serious thought to until something personal happens, which came later. While I left the Air Force, I went into the Navy, which is really where I wanted to be in the first place. I'd always had this tremendous feeling and connection with the ocean. I was an excellent swimmer, but I had a problem as a child. I had chronic motion sickness. If I got in a car and we went on a long trip, I got deathly ill, and same with the boats or anything. I couldn't ride on the things at the carnival that went around and around because it just made me tremendously ill. But I decided after I had gone through the Air Force experience that, sick or not, I was going to go in the Navy because that's really what I wanted to do. So I did. Volunteered for submarine duty and was assigned to the USS Tyru, SS-416, which was a diesel-electric boat, World War II type, that had been reconfigured. When I went on board the boat, it was in the dry dock at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, and had literally been cut in half, and they put in a 12-foot sonar section, and then 3 domes on the deck for triangulating targets using sonar. And this was really one of the most up-to-date electronically submarines that we had. Wasn't a nuclear submarine, but as far as the ability to approach, get close to a target and destroy it, it had a better capacity to do that than any other boat that we had. While we were on a transit from the Portland-Seattle area on the surface, I was the port lookout, and I saw the most incredible thing that I think I've ever seen in my life. And it had such a profound effect upon my view of the universe and the world that we live in, that I wish everybody could experience this. I saw come up out of the ocean, from beneath the surface of the sea, a huge disc-shaped craft about the size of a Midway-class aircraft carrier, which is tremendous in size. Even though that's one of our smallest carriers there was then, it's still a huge, tremendously big object. Came up out of the ocean and rose into the air and tumbled on its axis and went up into the clouds, and I was awestruck, dumbstruck. And I mean dumbstruck, literally. I could not utter a sound. And my first impulse was to tell the officer of the deck that I'd seen a flying saucer. And luckily for me, I couldn't talk, because on second thought, that's not what I really wanted to say. Because I didn't want to be the only Looney Tunes character on a submarine with a tight-knit crew that you had to live in close quarters with, because that's a hell of a way to live. So I told the officer of the deck that I'd seen something about 15 degrees off the port bow at a relative distance of about 2.5 nautical miles. And he began to look in that area. And the starboard lookout had heard me tell him this, and he began to look over there. And while we were all three watching, either the same craft or another one exactly like it came down out of the clouds, tumbled again on its, why it did this maneuver, I don't know, but every single time it did it. It's like it came down in this attitude, and then it flipped over, and then entered the water. And the water just appeared to open up in front of it. It's just like the account in the Bible about the parting of the Red Sea. That's exactly what happened. The sea actually parted, and this thing went into the water and it closed up behind it. And this big spray went up into the air. But it wasn't a spray from the craft hitting the water. It was a spray from the water coming back in to fill up this hole that had been created. And again, I think this is incredible. What are we looking at here? And it was metal. It was a machine, and it wasn't glowing or anything like that. It didn't have any lights on it that we could see. But it was obviously metal, and it was obviously a machine. And although I can't tell you that there was anyone inside of it, I believe that there was. And it did something that, as far as I knew, was absolutely impossible. I'd been in the Air Force. I'd worked on the state-of-the-art of our aviation capabilities. And here I was on the deck of a submarine in the conning tower, and I knew what we had to be able to have to go underwater, and I knew that the two were incompatible. Here's something that came from under the water and flew in the air and performed maneuvers, and then came back down and interfaced with the water at tremendous speed and remained intact, which realistically, it never touched the water. The water sort of magically opened up in front of it. But something had to interface with that water. Anything that we had that interfaced with the water in that manner would have been disintegrated. It's like hitting a brick wall. So I was looking at a technology that, as far as our laws of physics and what we knew at that time, didn't exist. This was in 1966. Ensign Ball was as shocked as I was. He called the captain to the bridge. He came up with the chief quartermaster, who brought a camera. And we all stood there and watched this occur over and over again for about 10 minutes. And I still to this day don't know if it was the same craft or a whole bunch of different craft going in and out of the water. But it seemed like that there was a hell of a lot of traffic on that freeway right there. And we were watching it as we went by. We never changed course. We never lowered or increased our speed. We made no attempt to communicate or signal. We made no attempt to get closer. And eventually, it just stopped. We were told not to discuss it with anyone, not even amongst ourselves, which was incredible. I never had been told anything like that in my life. You can't talk about something. And to be told that we couldn't even talk about it amongst ourselves was even more extraordinary, I thought. But we didn't. We didn't talk about it. When we got to Pearl Harbor, all the time the chief quartermaster was taking pictures of this. So I know photographs were made. What happened to those photographs, I have no idea. But when we reached Pearl Harbor, we were not allowed to go ashore to go on liberty, even though we didn't have a duty. And about 2 hours after we berthed at the submarine base, a commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence came on board and debriefed each one of us individually in the captain's stateroom. And the ultimate outcome of the debriefing was that we didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything, we had to read rules and regulations that told us that if we ever talked about what it was that we didn't see, that we could be imprisoned, we could be fined $10,000, we could lose all pay and allowances due ever to become due. And I learned at that moment that the United States Navy didn't want anybody to know about what we saw, and that severe consequences could come down around the neck of anybody who did. And that was when I understood fully that, yeah, there's a real cover-up. These things do exist, number one, and at least the United States Navy doesn't want anybody to know about it. And there's stiff penalties for anybody who bucks that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me just pause it right there for a second. because I just want to mention, I think, hold on a second, let me see here. I think it was probably a few months ago when we did a video and we discussed fallen angels. And we discussed how basically extraterrestrials, or what people have proclaimed to be extraterrestrials, are not actually aliens from another planet or extraterrestrials at all. They are not extraterrestrial, they're extra-dimensional. And we've discussed before in the past that those are actually fallen angels who are have been kicked out of the first heaven. The first heaven? The seventh? The third heaven. The third heaven. God's throne is in the third heaven, I believe. Anyways, the fallen angels were kicked out, so they reside in like the second heaven, so to speak. So in between this world and the next world. So I just wanted to point that out because here again, this is sort of, he's just kind of confirming, but you know, and you'll see that he questions. He doesn't say what they are. And I believe this was William Cooper's only experience that he ever saw any type of unidentified flying object. I think that was the only one he ever saw or encountered in his life. All the other stories that he has are things that he saw come through that were declassified, or I'm sorry, that were classified. So I just wanted to point that out. But let's let him continue.
Moving forward a few years from 1966, I believe, you gained a special security clearance that revealed to you certain documents, or were revealed to you, or that you saw relating to this very cover-up.
To this and many other things. I was eventually trained by Naval Security and Intelligence, and I was given a secondary NEC, which is Naval Enlisted Code, which was 9545, which is Internal Security Specialist. And an internal security specialist is someone who protects classified information, or protects areas, so to speak. And I had a specialty, which I was trained in, which was Pacific Area Intelligence Briefings. And I was eventually assigned to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, who was Admiral Bernard Clary at that time, and served as a member of his intelligence briefing team. And basically all that means, we really had a wonderful job. You come in about 4 o'clock in the morning and you go through all the message traffic and everything. And what you do is, what we did was we prepared an updated briefing on everything that was happening in his half of the world, which he commanded the naval forces and marine forces, as a matter of fact. And put all this together in a briefing where we would update him on ongoing operations, brief him about operations that were scheduled to begin, political situations, deployment of Soviet forces, naval forces, everything. And after the briefing was finished, between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning, then we were done. We were finished. So it was what we call fat cat duty, or geek-out duty in the Navy. It's got all different kinds of names. It's just really a wonderful job. Now, to be able to function in this job, I had to have a security clearance, which gave me access to the information that I had to need to know to help prepare these briefings. And when I first was assigned to the command, I was attached to the OPSTAT office under Lieutenant Commander Mercado, which was operational status reporting. And while I waited for my security clearance, and it took 6 months to get it. What I eventually ended up with was a top secret Q clearance with an SCI attachment, which means sensitive compartmentalized information, and there were no blocks. In other words, there was nothing confining me to only certain compartmentalized information. I had access to whatever the admiral and his staff had access to, because we had to prepare briefings and brief these people on all of these things. And I'm sure that at first I was tested and wasn't shown a whole lot, but eventually, when they began to have confidence in me, I began to see things coming across my desk that were just absolutely incredible. And a lot of it is really hard to talk about because it's so far outside the normal concept of reality for the average American that that they're going to find a hard time believing any of it. Mm-hmm. But I saw documents that were labeled under the classification top secret, and the compartmentalized the compartment that was put into was called Magic, MAJIC. Mm-hmm. Which told me that UFOs are real, which I already knew. I'd seen one. Right. But this went farther than that. It told me that they were extraterrestrial in origin, that there were 4 different extraterrestrial species or races visiting this Earth, and that they had actually entered into an agreement with the United States government with one of these species of alien beings to exchange technology, and it told me all the projects that was underneath this. Project Red Light was actually the testing of extraterrestrial craft. Project Plato was a diplomatic project. Pounce was the recovery of technology. Pluto was the application of that technology to our own secret space program, not the public space program. There are 2 different space programs. One is what the public gets to see, which is overseen by NASA, and the other one is a secret space program that nobody gets to see, which is really overseen by the Navy Department under specialized, compartmentalized black projects. And what these people are doing in secret is just absolutely incredible. I also saw documents under an operation called Operation Majority, which outlined the plans to bring together a one world government, and also included extraterrestrial information within that.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there for a second because there's a couple of things that I want to point out. So, as you see what he's talking about, he's saying that this classified information that came across his desk, one of the things that he saw was that they were extraterrestrial in origin, and that they had entered into an agreement to exchange information regarding technology, which is where I believe a lot of our technology has come from. Another thing I wanted to point out is how he just mentioned how one of the documents talked about a one world government, and that had extraterrestrial information as well. Because it is believed that this one world government and the Antichrist and the beast is being set up. We know that it's being set up by the dragon because that's in our Bible. Who is the dragon? The dragon is Lucifer. The dragon is Satan and his fallen angels. It all goes back to the beginning. Remember how Brad Scott says the end is revealed right out of the beginning. And so just keep all of this in mind, because all of this ties into the end. All of this ties into Revelations. All of this ties into this grand deception that's going to come on the earth. Listen, you think that this is far out? The Bible says that the anti-Messiah is going to call down fire from heaven and do marvelous signs and wonders. So we have to be prepared to not be beguiled by someone, doing a magic show, even though it may seem real. Basically, the people who don't have God, those who are in power that have no connection to Yehovah or Yeshua, are making. So you and I are in a covenant with the true God. They are in a covenant with the fallen ones. They are in a covenant relationship with their God, which from the beginning has always been Lucifer, has always been Hasatan, has always been Satan and his fallen angels, the fallen ones. So this all ties in. This all ties into, the fallen angels, and because remember, in the end, in Revelations, the dragon is going to go after the woman and her seed. Okay? Okay, Linda, we'll see you later. Have a great evening. And Christine, you actually pointed out something very important as well. She said, what's under Antarctica? I don't know if it's about what's under Antarctica, although that's definitely part of it, as it is, what is Antarctica? Is Antarctica just a frozen block of ice at the bottom of a globe? See, then we can really go down a rabbit hole and say that there is no globe, that there's actually a domed terrain that's basically kind of more like flat, and that Antarctica is actually this ring of ice that's around the outside of it. If you want to know more on, listen, don't call me a flat earther. It's not really flat, but there are many who still believe that we do not live on a globe, that NASA has perpetuated this lie, that we are on a globe that's spinning around the sun, and that there's millions and millions and millions of other planets, and we're not really the center of the universe. Whereas the Bible speaks from a position that we are special, and God and the heavenlies are focused on us. And the enemy wants to deter you from believing that. That's the only way that they can come up with evolution. That's the only way that the enemy can deter you from believing in a God, is if you believe that you're on a globe that's amongst millions and millions and millions and millions of other planets, and you're just, spinning thousands and thousands of miles an hour around the sun in a solar system that's in a galaxy that's in the universe among galaxies. And if you can get someone to believe that, then how easy is it going to believe that? I mean, just look at the History Channel. If you watch the History Channel, you know what? When I'm at work and I turn the History Channel on, because the History Channel used to teach history, but they don't anymore because they're owned and operated by some liberal owner, I'm sure. All day long, it's ancient aliens, ancient aliens, ancient aliens, ancient aliens, and all they're telling you all day is that the extraterrestrials and the aliens are God, and they're the ones who planted us here. They're the ones that created us. Lucifer really thinks that's going to work, but guess what? It's going to work for a lot of people because they're not connected to God, and they don't know truth, and they're not looking, or they don't care. Maybe they just don't care. And a lot of it is just ignorance. But this is what they're teaching people. They're teaching this on public television, that, first of all, that we came from monkeys, but that aliens created us and planted us here. But those are fallen angels. Those are not actual angels, good angels. Christine said, bloodlines, Genesis 6 is so revealing when you dig. Amen. Okay, let's play a little bit more. Let's see what William Cooper says.
Project Grudge, which was the second project. First was Sign, and then Project Grudge, which contained all of the extraterrestrial information up to a certain point. I forget the year cutoff. And then it was contained after that in another project called Project Aquarius, which was the accumulation of the whole history of alien interaction on planet Earth. But I have to say at this point that I don't know if those documents were really telling the truth or not. They could have been showing me these things so that eventually I would go out and talk about this. And maybe that'll become clear to you later why they may have done that. It could be real. So.
Mm-hmm. But at this point, from a personal standpoint, what was it that, based on your experience in '66, and they said, absolutely do not reveal this to anybody, and here we are a few years later, and you're seeing documents that prove that what you saw was real. Mm-hmm. What was the one factor or a number of factors that led you to the decision to say, I've got to get this out, I've got to tell people about this?
I saw contingency plans called Majestic. And these contingency plans were to, first place, a contingency is a plan that can be implemented if certain things occur. And the certain things that would have tripped this contingency plan are, number one, the public sector is getting too close to the truth, so they have to implement this to get them steered off the track. Or number two, we don't want to tell the public the truth about the alien presence, but there's so much alien activity occurring that the public is on the verge of finding out anyway. Let's tell them this story so that it doesn't cause consequences that we don't want. And that plan was called Majestic. I was in a bookstore one time. I'd never seen UFO magazine. Didn't even know it exists. In fact, I didn't even know that there was a UFO culture in the world of people who study UFOs or worship UFOs or have little UFO meetings. I had no idea that that was occurring. I was in a bookstore one time and I was looking at the magazine rack. I'm an avid reader and I'm always in bookstores. And this one day I saw a magazine just popped right out at me, at UFO. And I picked it up and I looked inside, and here is Majestic, all right there. And even the people who had been named to implement the plan were the ones who were actually implementing it. William Moore, Stanton Friedman. I'd never heard of Jamie Chandler, but he was named, and they had brought out a supposed genuine document called the Eisenhower Briefing Document, which in reality is a fraudulent document. It's a fake, and it was created to implement the plan Majestic, to either indoctrinate the public on what the government wants the public to perceive as happening, or to steer researchers away from the truth, or both.
So this wasn't revealing the plan of Majestic, but it was actually implementing the plan.
Implementing the plan against the public. It was a psychological operation against the public.
So this is what you saw.
So immediately my head began to spin around, and I began to think, God, I've got to.
Special security clearance that,
Sorry.
and I'd say the very understatement controversy.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. 1 second. I wanted to point something out. How William Cooper was saying that it was a psychological operation against the public. First of all, I'm sure we can go back in time and pick out several other circumstances, but let's just look at 2020, for example, and everything that's gone on with the rioting and like all this mayhem and blow up from a criminal being killed. I'm not even going to get into that, but do you see how easy it is to manipulate, especially today, particularly today, because unfortunately, like back in the 50s and 60s and even 70s, maybe even the 80s, people were more intelligent. They spoke more intelligent. They didn't watch a lot of TV because TV wasn't as accessible as it is today. They didn't have cell phones. People read books more. They were more, they read the newspaper. They were just more, they were using their mind more. Shoot, they probably were doing crossword puzzles and, all these other things that keep your brain working. Whereas today, people are they have a short attention span. And it's so easy, as we can see what has happened this year, how easily it is to get people into your agenda and moving to do whatever you want them to do. And he was talking about this was happening, he's saying, back in the 70s. Okay, let's continue.
It also is now extending, based on some things that you're revealing, into the Kennedy assassination.
Yes, in the set of documents, which really was literally 2 or 3 file cabinets of documents, called Operation Majority, I saw documents which told me what happened in Dallas and why. And basically what these documents said was that the intelligence community felt that John F. Kennedy was a threat to the national security, which translated into reality means was a threat to the New World Order, the one world government, which they were actively in the process of forming.
Was there anything on record that indicated that he was out to Well, things that he did would threaten that New World Order.
Oh, absolutely. He had written an executive order. I don't remember the exact number now, but it's available to anybody that wants to go look it up. He had written an executive order ordering the printing of United States notes, which would have broken the back of the Federal Reserve, which is one of the major instruments of propelling the United States into the New World Order by destroying our economy, the basis upon which we live, the basis upon which our whole society is founded, is being ripped right out from under us. That was one. Number two, he refused to provide air support for the invasion of Bay of Pigs, which ensured that would be a failure. He had threatened publicly on several occasions to disband the CIA and scatter it to the thousand winds. He had ordered, in the documents that I saw, he had ordered the intelligence community to prepare a plan to disclose the truth about UFOs to the public. Now, I don't know what that truth was. Could be that maybe there are no extraterrestrials. But whatever the truth was, he had ordered a plan to be prepared that disclosure was going to be done according to that plan within the following year. And the intelligence community considered that to be out of the question. And according to the documents that I saw, his assassination was ordered by the policy committee of the Bilderberg Group, which is really the secret world government, and it was carried out by agents of Division 5 of the FBI, the Secret Service, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Office of Naval Intelligence, of which I was a part, in Dallas. And it said that the assassin, the man who actually administered the head wound, was the driver of the car, William Greer, a Secret Service agent, who used an assassination pistol built by the CIA for assassinations that was really an air gun that fired an exploding pellet or could fire a small hypodermic needle or a poison dart using any one of many different deadly poisons. Specifically, it said that he fired an exploding pellet which contained shellfish toxin, and that the act was plainly visible in a film withheld from the public. I looked for 16 years to find that film, and I finally found a copy that showed William Greer turn around and shoot the president. And since 1988, I've been showing that film wherever I'm able to show it to wake people up. It is not our government, though you have to understand, that is doing these things. It is not our government that's failing us. It's not the Constitution or the Bill of Rights that's a bad instrument. It is a group of men who belong to secret societies who have infiltrated our society and our government at all levels and are destroying it and subverting it from within. And every member of naval intelligence that I knew who was an officer was a 32nd or a 33rd degree Freemason. And I asked my commanding officer at one point, I said, why are all you guys Masons? He said, Masons are used to keeping secrets. It's part of their fraternity. So if you want someone who already knows how to keep a secret, you recruit Freemasons. Well, later on, I found out what the truth is. The truth is you're not going to be a naval intelligence officer unless you are a Freemason or a member of the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, but you have to be high degrees for that. I think the reason I was selected as enlisted in is because I had belonged to the Demolay Society,
Which is what?
as a teenager. That's sort of the first level of Freemasonry. That's how they recruit teenagers and indoctrinate them into their principles so that they go right into Freemasonry when they become an adult. So basically that's the story.
Okay. Well, based on the information that you're revealing, which would seem to be equally or if not more of a threat than what Kennedy was originally planning on doing, is actually revealing the underlying cause of all of this. Why?
I'm just going to pause it for a second because I want to mention something about the Kennedy assassination. I mean, to this very day, people are still trying to get to the bottom of what happened to John F. Kennedy, because if you watch the video, I mean, from the moment it happened, people stopped believing. The JFK assassination is equal to our generation's 9/11. It was after that that people really started losing faith in their government. They knew something was wrong. They knew someone was not telling the truth. Something was up. And, you know, a president of the United States just doesn't get assassinated like that, particularly because of the high amounts of security that we have with the CIA and the Secret Service that surround the president. There's no way that that should have happened. And I've actually watched the videos that he's talking that they're out there, and you can see it. You can actually see very well. I think he gets shot in the neck first from some other. I don't know if it's from some other angle or how that happens, but his head goes down, and then you actually see the driver turn around, shoot him, and then turn right back around. And what's really interesting is there's a woman who's probably in her 90s to this day. She was on the other side of the vehicle, and there was people out there. They wanted to get a picture of a photograph of the president as he was driving by. So they're in the grass, and she actually took a Polaroid at the moment that he got shot from the opposite angle. When you see the video, you're seeing it from the grassy knoll looking at towards him. She was on the other side facing the grassy knoll where Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly is where he shot him. And there's nobody there. And they totally dismissed her photograph as evidence. How do you dismiss that as evidence unless you don't want it as evidence? Because this woman to this day has that photo, and it's actually in a museum in New York City. But she took the picture at the moment he got shot, and it has a perfect view, wide view of the grassy knoll, and there is nobody there. How creepy is that? So I just thought I would point that out as far as the JFK situation. A lot of you probably weren't even born. I don't think anybody's watching that was born during that time or was actively alive during that time. But that was people started questioning their government immediately after that. They just didn't trust it. That was our generation's 9/11. Okay, let's continue.
Why is it that you are here today, or how is it that you are here today and you're not, conveniently taken away and put in a padded cell somewhere so that you can't speak of these things?
Well, I really don't know the true answer to that question, because you would have to ask them to find out why they haven't done anything. But I can tell you this. I began to reveal information in 1976, and I was physically attacked on 2 occasions. My skull was caved in. That's what all these scars are here. On the second attack, I lost my leg. They visited me in the hospital. They had no intention of killing me. They were delivering a message to me. Shut up. And that was the message that came through loud and clear. And 2 men who identified themselves with identification cards who belonged to the Defense Investigative Service, which is really the Defense Intelligence Agency, asked me if I was going to shut up or they were going to have to do it right. And I told them, I said, you don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be a good little boy for the rest of my life, and I'm going to shut my mouth. And I did for 16 years, kept silent until I saw this UFO magazine in a bookstore, which indicated that they had implemented the contingency plan called Majestic. But if you want to know what I think the reason is, I believe that there are several. One, they've had a plan that's been in force since the 40s to debunk, ridicule, destroy anybody who ever talks about these subjects. And the public has been thoroughly indoctrinated that if you talk about any of these things that I'm talking about, you're just another nut. So the public, by and large, doesn't pay any attention to it. So in that sense, I'm not a threat. If the president had come on television and said, hey, this is what's going on, then they would have listened and they pay attention to it. But people like me, they perceive me as being just another loony bin, fruitcake, nut, which I assure you I'm not. But that's the perception that they've been brainwashed into believing. And so that's what they believe. Number 2, I am so much in front of the public from the very beginning when I began to talk. And that's how I protected myself, or at least that's what I thought would protect me, and so far it's proven to be right. was that if I got literally in front of the public overnight, in front of a large public, that they wouldn't do anything to me because it would substantiate what it was that I'm saying. And they certainly don't want to do that. But also create a martyr. And martyrs create tremendously dangerous political movements that they don't want that either. So literally within a 24-hour period, I spent $27,000 mailing a thick packet of information all over the world to people I'd never heard of, didn't know. We went down and got some mailing lists and just mailed this stuff all over the world. And so literally, when people opened these packages in their mailbox, and it was a perfect plan because they couldn't stop it. They didn't even know I was going to do it in the first place. And since we sent it all over the world, once it was out, there's no way they could retrieve it. At least no way that I can conceive of. So literally within 24 hours, I was a public presence. And people were asking all over the world, who's Bill Cooper? Is this true? Look what I got in the mail. And just literally flipped the world over on its ear. And I've been in front of the public ever since. So I think basically those are the reasons. They don't believe that the public's really going to listen to me. And so far that's been true. There is a small group of people all over the world who are awakening, who are beginning to understand that they've been living their life in fantasy land, and who are actively seeking the truth. But by and large, when the secret power structure says, as I've put in the first chapter of my book, right out of one of their own technical manuals, that a nation or world of people who do not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence, and thus are stakes on the table by choice and consent, they're absolutely right about the majority of people. It's one of the things that has been an illumination to me is that they're not always wrong. And many of their goals are the right goals, but the method that they're using to reach that goal is the wrong method. In other words, if you set out to create a perfect world where there will never be any more killing, but to reach that point, you kill 2 billion people, you have become what you're trying to avoid. And it can't happen that way. If you want to create a world of peace, it has to be done by people's methods. Yeah, if you murder someone to destroy a murderer, you have become what it was you set out to destroy, and thus it wasn't destroyed at all. It was perpetuated by that very action. And that's what these men are doing. They rationalize everything they do so that they feel better about it. But what they are doing is becoming what it is that they want to get rid of. And the world will never be a safe place for anyone as long as there are men who do these things.
Very eloquently said. Thank you. Now, your message to people, once again, is don't believe anything. How is it that the public can find this and search for this truth on their own if they can't believe anything or anyone? What can you do?
It's all in the public sector. It's all available to anyone who actively and diligently seeks it out. Everything that's in my book, Behold a Pale Horse, is all. Everything in here, all the documents that are in here, everything that's in this book is in the public domain.
Can be substantiated?
Yes, and I intentionally wrote this book not using anything that wasn't available to the public to show people that yes, if I can find this information, so can you. I have tons of stuff that's not available to the public. But as you can see by reading this book, you don't need that stuff because it's what you need is available to you. Public libraries are overflowing with the proof of what's really going on in the world, but nobody really utilizes it to the extent that they're able to pick this out and put it together. Another thing I've done for people is I've put it together for them so that they can see the overall picture rather than looking at small things and thinking that it's isolated. Nothing is isolated. It's all part of a big puzzle. And the puzzle is coming together. And when the puzzle is assembled, it's going to be a one-world totalitarian socialist government that nobody's going to like except the people that are running it. It's Hitler all over again. And the rationalization is we're going to create the world without war.
The utopia.
The utopia. But they will never create that utopia because they're not dealing with the problem that makes them want to create it, and that is the inherent flaw in each individual human being that makes us do the things that we do. Until that's overcome,
That's it.
there's never going to be a world without war, or without rape, or without killing, or without robbery, and anybody that thinks that there is
That's it.
has already gone off the deep end.
So the method is, here, I'm going to hold a gun to your head so you won't rape, you won't kill.
That's right.
Yes, okay, I understand. The title of your book, Behold a Pale Horse, what significance does that have? What are you saying with this title?
This title is from the book of Revelations, because I have to tell you this, and you may think I'm nuts if you want to, but this is the truth. Either these men are following the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
They're either following it, just like a plan, and bringing the prophecies in there to pass to manipulate and control those who believe in those prophecies and neutralize them, so to speak. In other words, if this is written in the Bible and God has ordained it, who am I to resist? It must come to pass, so I'm not going to try to stop it.
Right.
What a perfect way to neutralize the opposition right off the bat. Or there really is a God, and what he said was going to come to pass is coming to pass. And I named this, Behold a Pale Horse, from chapter 13 of the book of Revelations. Mm-hmm. The fourth horseman of the apocalypse is the pale horse. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with the beasts of the earth. And that is taking place now today. The fourth horseman is riding across the world now. That's what AIDS is all about. That's what all these little brush fire wars all over the world are all about. That's what's happening. That's why cancer cures are suppressed. It's because they fully intend to kill a minimum of 2 billion people by the year 2000. AIDS is an invention of man. It is not a natural disease, and it has been implemented and placed into the population as a population control. And when they did it, they had the cure before they did it. Mm-hmm. And when they deem that enough people have died or been killed, they will say, we have a cure for AIDS. And everybody will be called to report to some place to get an inoculation, which is going to do two things. One, it's going to stop AIDS in its tracks. And number two, it's going to implant a device which will be able to be used to track each individual person and maybe even to control those people. And that's what the pet implant program is all about. It's not about finding lost pets. They don't give a damn about pets, and they would never put a satellite in orbit to find a lost pet, but yet there's a satellite up there that they're using to find pets that have been implanted with these devices. They're testing this program on pets that's going to be used in human beings.
I'm going to pause that for a second. See, that's another thing I wanted to bring to your attention, because look what's going on with COVID, and they're rushing this vaccine. And I think it's very, very, very important that you take the whole picture into consideration when it comes to the vaccine that they want to give everybody, that they want to rush to get out for COVID. And, it's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to play out as far as what the requirements are, what things are going to be required, as basically what institutions are going to require you to have the vaccine. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and that I also wanted to touch on that because I knew he was going to bring that up. And mind you, this was the early 1990s. This video is 1992, I believe. So, these things are done in stages. These things have been going on up until today. So there's nothing new under the sun. It's just on a larger scale now. Okay, let's continue.
And in the Los Angeles Times in 1989, they ran an article. It was 10 forecasts for the coming decade, was the title of the article. I have a copy of it in my research center. And number 5, I believe it was number 5, in those 10 forecasts for the coming decade was chemical or electronic implants to control individual behavior on a 24-hour basis, unquote. So it's not hidden at all. It's there for anybody who wants to look.
But nobody's looking.
Nobody's looking. They believe, and I believe that they're right, that the biggest danger to mankind right now is man himself, population. A study in 1957 told them that by 1990 the world population would double in 33 years. Can you imagine that? The world population of human beings doubled in 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew that it's an exponential doubling throughout history. Every time it's doubled, the interval has gotten shorter. So that was 33 years. The next doubling will take place in approximately 28 years. The next one after that, approximately 24 years. Can you imagine if the world population doubles again in 28 years from 1990? In other words, in the year 2018, the world population doubles. And we're having problems with food supplies and timber and clean water and clean air now. And then after that it doubles again in another 24 years. That's why they created AIDS. Because they didn't want to have to go around the world and say, you and you up against the wall, you've got to die today. And shoot them. They did it in a manner where they could target what they consider to be undesirable populations. And I want to be very clear that I don't agree with them on this. They specifically targeted blacks, Hispanics, and homosexuals for complete eradication. And AIDS is really going through those populations. And it's really doing a number of blacks, Hispanics, and homosexuals.
That theory has made news. I've heard that before. And,
Well,
and
this
it's been
isn't a
debunked
theory.
very clear by the public saying, oh, that's ridiculous. But you're saying that that may indeed be the case.
It's not ridiculous. I actually saw this in documents. And the project name was Project Naomi. MK Naomi was the name of it. It was a CIA project, the AIDS, whatever causes AIDS, whatever that turns out to be, according to those documents, was developed at Fort Detrick, Maryland, under a CIA project called MK Naomi. It was financed by $10 million for the Department of the Army's biological warfare programs. It was carried out, supervised by the CIA, carried out by scientists who worked for the Special Operations Division of the Department of Defense. And it's doing its job.
And would you assume if AIDS doesn't work, there's a contingency plan for that even?
Well, I think that they have other things out there working concurrently. One thing I've learned about these men is they don't just do one thing. In case the public discovers what they're doing, or discovers that somebody's doing, whether they know who's really doing it or not, and stops it, what they have running is several concurrently running plans, so that if one or two fail, the other ones are going to take care of the problem.
It sounds pretty hopeless. I mean, based on that scenario, is there anything, any uprising or what?
Yeah, there is, but it requires that people wake up. It requires that they really learn the truth instead of live their life in fantasy land. You see, because nothing can exist without the consent of the people.
Right.
Unless they buy it, it's not going to happen.
That's it.
And all of these plans lead to the public's ultimate acceptance of what they're going to do. In fact, they're designed to make the public ask for it. For instance, the burning of the rainforest in Brazil. I know people who are just up in arms. Stop this. We've got to stop the burning of the rainforest, which is exactly what the burning of the rainforest is designed to do. Because Brazil is a sovereign nation, right? How can you tell a sovereign nation to stop burning its own forest? You can't. What they're asking for is control over a sovereign nation by a world governing body who can then send troops, a police force, to make Brazil stop burning the rainforest, and that's why they started the burning of the rainforest in the first place. You see, they went down there and they built a road across the Amazon jungle that went nowhere. There was no reason for this road to be built. There was no place to go. It doesn't go from here to a city on the other side. It just goes across the jungle and ends. And they built this road on purpose because they knew that most of the people in Brazil are so dirt poor that they would see this road as the answer to their prayers. Free land, free timber, a way to support their family, a way to become wealthy, or at least more wealthy than they were, which was no wealthy. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. Millions of people headed out down this road and staked out some land and burned the forest and tried to grow crops. And they found that rainforest is no good for growing crops. It'll grow one crop, and then you got to go burn more trees and plant another crop because the soil is poor. And that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. And that's why the forest is being burned. And it was done intentionally to create the scream of stop burning the rainforest, so that then they could offer the solution. The solution is a world governing body that can then order and enforce that order of Brazil to stop burning.
So the green movement worldwide is now just a manipulation.
Yes.
Sound familiar?
Now it's been proposed time and again too that big business is behind things like this, and that would represent a capitalist approach. But what you're saying is we're heading toward a socialist approach based on this scenario.
You have to understand the difference between capitalism, socialism, communism, what all of these things really mean. You have to understand what the difference is between right wing and left wing. People, they use these phrases all the time, and they don't even know what these things mean. And it's just incredible to me to hear a socialist calling someone else a Nazi. Because Nazi means National Socialism. So here's a socialist calling a right-wing guy a Nazi, when what he should be calling the right-wing guy is anarchist.
And that's what's happening
People on the
today,
right
folks.
want no control. Mm-hmm. They're really anarchists.
So they would, in theory then, or in fact, be in opposition to this ultimate movement.
Yes.
Whereas in appearance, they would be the ones behind it.
Well, when you have a misunderstanding of what the terms mean, yes.
Okay.
Right-wing, on the far right, is total anarchy. They don't want anybody controlling anything that they do, and they believe that people are responsible enough that the world can exist without government.
Okay.
Or the very minimal government that it would take to. On the far left, on the other hand, they believe that the government should be in total control and should be supply man with all of his needs.
Well, creating a whole society that's dependent.
Right. A republic is somewhere in the middle. It's governance by laws. Laws are decided by representatives who are elected by the people. And according to the theory, the representatives will do what is right, whether they get elected or not, because it's not really a democracy. A democracy is far left. People don't understand. We don't live in a democracy. This country is not a democracy. It is a republic. A democracy is ruled by the mob. The mob always votes themselves every kind of benefit that they can vote themselves. And whenever you do that, it means large, tremendously overpowering government and control.
They vote themselves into dependency.
That's it. They vote themselves into a dictatorship is what they do, where they lose all of the benefits that they intended to vote themselves into in the first place.
Okay.
And democracies are extremely dangerous to minorities, because if the majority of people don't like you,
right,
they're going to vote that they kill you, and they can, that's it. Democracies are dangerous. Democracies are socialists. Democracies are communism. That's what communism is. The definition of communism is everybody doing according to their talents and receiving according to their need. And it doesn't work. We already know it doesn't work. Men, by his inherent nature, is greedy. So those at the top always end up having everything, and those at the bottom end up having nothing in communism. Socialism is different. Socialism usually ends up in a dictatorship, in a very controlling dictatorial government which even owns the people that it governs. so that those who live in fear of not having are provided for what they need, and in turn they worship this oppressive government. Socialists are children who went out into the world, took a look around and said, I can't handle it, and went home to Daddy.
Okay.
Daddy, protect me. Daddy, feed me. Daddy, loan me your car. Daddy, tuck me in at night. Socialists are scared little children who are irresponsible, can't stand on their own 2 feet, and need Daddy to take care of them.
Okay.
Okay?
And now we got the...
But what happens when you go home to Daddy and Daddy does all these things for you? Tell me.
Well, you never leave the home. You've not got no reason to. In other words, if you're being provided for in that way.
You're being provided for, but what does it mean? Doesn't it mean that you have to do what Daddy tells you to do? True. Doesn't it mean you have to be in when Daddy tells you to be in? Doesn't it mean that you can't drive the car to the next town if Daddy tells you you can't? Doesn't it mean that if Daddy tells you to take out the trash, you better take out the trash? Are you beginning to understand the concept? When you ask for favors from Daddy, you have to give up freedom in return. So socialism always leads to repression of liberty, freedom, equality. All of those things fly out the window so that you can have free health care, so that you can have a place to live but you don't have to pay the rent, so that you can have food given to you by the state. And that's where we're headed. Right in this country right now, we're almost totally socialist, and now people are screaming for a national health care policy.
Right.
Health care insurance.
Now, the other aspect, once again, I like to go into is the anarchy or the right wing, which we just into that similar.
Anarchists believe that they can be responsible, that they won't hurt other people, that your freedom never ends until it begins to infringe upon someone else's freedom, and that no one should have any control over that there should be no speed limits on the highways. The problem is that, again, just like on the socialist side, you have people over here that are human, and human condition means that ultimately somebody's not going to be responsible, that they're going to drive too fast when they've had too much to drink, and they're going to kill innocent people. The answer is a balance. You know, the law of the universe says this. It's a law of physics, really, and everybody can understand it. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. There can be no good unless there is evil. There can be no man without a woman. You understand the concept?
Based on that, the theory of a utopia here on Earth is corrupt right away.
Absolutely.
It goes against the laws of physics.
It goes against the law of the universe that there must be two opposing forces all the time in every instance, because that's what makes the universe work. That's what makes everything work. What we need to do is stop trying to go way over here and establish some utopia of freedoms, or way over here to establish some repression of freedom so that we make sure that we got something on the table to eat. And strike a balance between the two that works.
That's it.
And stop withholding information. What makes it difficult for anyone to succeed or live, or for us to really come together and have peace in this world, are all of these people who think that they are the guardians of the secrets of the ages, and have only them have truly mature minds, so only them are worthy of knowing the secrets and the real science and the real metaphysics and all of these things. So they repress it and they keep it secret. So the rest of us live out our lives and we don't know the truth of what life is really all about. Therefore, we're always stumbling over each other and getting in each other's way and doing the things that we profess that we don't want to do. Simply because we don't have access to the truth. If we had access to the truth. Now, I got to tell you this. Back when these men first began establishing these societies, these mystery schools, and suppressing information, the common man was uneducated, did not have an intellect capable of understanding these secrets. They were really beasts of burden, for the most part, and they lived their whole life in toil.
Right.
But things are not that way now. Most people have a good education. They have a good mind. They're capable of understanding if they're taught, and if they're taught correctly. And I think it's time to teach people what the truth is and quit hiding it, so that we can come together as one humanity and make a balance and live together in a balance. You know, evil's never going to disappear, neither is good. But we can maintain a balance and life can be good. Instead of swinging back in this tremendous battle between these two opposing, radical, extreme ends of the scale. That's got to stop. I've never understood why somebody would join together in this band of people and call themselves a Democrat and not vote for anybody else if they're not a Democrat. That concept is beyond my understanding. And Republicans and libertarians and populists and communists and socialists and this and that, and blacks and whites and Indians, and there are so many sects and groups and segments, and we're so fragmented that getting together is going to really be difficult. But we've got to do it. Because if we don't wake up and do it ourselves, these men who meet in secret and plot the manipulations are going to do it whether we want it or not, and they're going to do it at the point of a gun. And they're going to take away everybody's freedom because they don't consider us responsible.
Capable of having that freedom.
Are capable, or even of using our intellect. So they'll put us in shackles and control us and force us to be peaceful. That's what the plan is, and that's what the New World Order is all about.
Well, we've run from UFOs right to this. And at first, a person might watch this and say, wow, this is really strange. But where we've come down to, based on that beginning, is quite in the realm of common sense.
Well, it's not strange at all. It's what they've been trained all their life, that if they hear these buzzwords, they're listening to some loony idiot talk, and it has no substance to it. Once they get into it, though, and begin to understand that everything is interconnected, it's leading us toward one end, a one-world totalitarian socialist government, and begin to see it coming to pass all around them in their life, and understand that nothing happens by accident. It's been planned for many years. Then they begin to understand that UFOs play a big role in this. Because if they're real, it's the most significant thing that's ever happened in the history of man, and maybe the driving force behind locking up the human race. Because how could a UFO land in a place like Macon, Georgia, and somebody who doesn't look like us get out and walk down the street? And I'm not trying to insult the citizens of the state of Georgia. What if they landed in Newark, New Jersey, and got out and walked down the street? In a society that kills people because they sit in the wrong seat on a bus.
I'd assume now that they'll know about us.
Of course, they probably already know about you if you've been exposing the truth in the show.
Would you assume that our phone lines would be bugged at this point?
I don't know, I doubt it. They don't really consider you to be a threat unless you develop a large political following.
Okay.
So, unless you have a large political following, you're not considered to be a threat. Because they figure that the people are too stupid to listen to you. And generally they're right.
So we're in the process of educating people. That's the best thing.
Education is 60 or 70% of the battle.
Yeah.
Because people automatically begin to do the right things once they learn what the truth is.
Right.
Hold on. Okay, I got it.
Ready?
Ready. Okay, good.
Let's go back into the Kennedy situation here. Now, the Warren Commission was highly publicized. All the things that went on there. I was shown a videotape just yesterday of was it a Zapruder film?
It is the Zapruder.
Okay, and it clearly showed to me that a number of things. One in which that the film was obviously tampered with.
Absolutely.
But not tampered with to the point where I couldn't tell that the driver of the limousine was pulling a gun, or what appeared to look like a gun, around his shoulder and shooting President Kennedy in the head. That caused his head to snap back. Did the Warren Commission see this? It seems so.
The Warren Commission never looked at the Zapruder film, ever. So they never saw it. Now, I don't know who testified during the Warren Commission about the Zapruder film, if anybody did. But I do know that later at the investigations of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, that a man was specifically hired as an expert witness to view the Zapruder film and tell the committee what it showed. And that man's name is Robert Groden. He wrote High Treason, which is a bestseller out now on the Kennedy assassination. And he was one of the many so-called technical experts for the making of Oliver Stone's film called JFK. He's also a fake, fraud, a traitor, a liar. He was hired by the House Select Committee on Assassinations based upon his resume, which says, very simply, that he is the world's foremost #1 photo analyst, which is a lie. He never went to school in photography. He never was a photographer. He never was a photo analyst. And I got to tell you right now that the world's #1 foremost photo analysts all come out of the military, intelligence community, who are trained to interpret high altitude photography and learn what really is there. He never served in that capacity either. He looked at the Zapruder film and he told Congress, he told the committee in testimony, he testified, both in written and in verbal form, that William Greer never took his hands off the steering wheel. And that's a blatant lie. I mean, anybody can look at the Zapruder film and see that William Greer takes his hands off the steering wheel. And even if you couldn't see it, if they cut out the frame, you can still see that William Greer, if this were the seat of the car, is turned all the way around with his right side against the rear cushion of the front seat, looking directly at President Kennedy in this attitude, and it is a physical impossibility to have both hands on the wheel in that attitude. So we know that Robert Groden, #1, was not who he said he was, had no expertise to be doing the job that he was hired to do. #2, even if he had no expertise, it is plainly visible in the film that William Greer could not possibly have had both hands on the wheel. So we know that Robert Groden didn't make a mistake. We know that he intentionally lied to deceive Congress and thus the American people. And what's real strange about it is he's been very active in the research community, supposedly exposing the assassination of President Kennedy. But if you look what he does, he is constantly coming up with new theories, supposed new evidence, most of which is fake. And in his book now, High Treason, he makes a statement that Kennedy was...
I'm going to fast forward it a little bit because we're running short of time. I just want to fast forward to the next subject. Hold on 1 second.
They're serious. It's the secret societies who are bringing about the New World Order. They're the ones who killed John F. Kennedy. There's nothing wrong with our Constitution or our Bill of Rights. But Americans are going to be convinced that our government sucks. And that's what all this stuff is all about.
So at the beginning, the founders of this country actually did create what was I guess you could say, an above-board, good government basis for it.
Oh yes, they gave us every tool to ensure the success. But it was an experiment, you see, because man had always claimed that he could rule himself, but had never been allowed to do that. Even in ancient Rome, they call it a democracy. Man didn't rule himself. He was ruled by other people who made man think he was ruling himself. But the truth was, a Roman centurion could march down the street and grab anybody they wanted to and make you do whatever they wanted to, or just execute you on the spot. And that was the truth of the matter. Those weren't free people. In the history of the world, there had never been a people who were truly free or who truly ruled themselves until the United States of America was created as a republic by which we ruled ourselves through elected representatives whom we sent to the State House, either in the States or to Congress, to do. They also gave us every tool by which we would destroy ourselves if we weren't capable of doing it. The United States and France, the revolution in this country and the revolution in France, were created to bring about governments which would function as the antithesis to the kings and queens of the world and cause them to topple off their thrones. It also gave man a chance to prove once and for all whether he could rule himself or not. And if he could, fine. That would be the New World Order. If he couldn't, they built the tools into the Constitution to allow them to take it away from us. And those tools are the creation of the federal democracy within the boundaries of Washington, D.C., and the right to contract, through which, if we were irresponsible, we would contract to receive rights from that federal democracy and thus, in return, give up our freedom. And that's exactly what's happening. It's exactly what we've done. John F. Kennedy was short-circuiting the New World Order. He had ordered the printing of constitutional money, United States notes, which would have destroyed the Federal Reserve, which is not an agency of the United States government. It's a private corporation owned and operated by the world bankers, controlled by the Illuminati. And its purpose was to destroy the middle class in this country and thus our economy, and throw us at the mercy of the New World Order.
And we see this unfolding now.
You see it unfolding now. You are seeing, and I predicted this well in advance, you are seeing the destruction of the economy of the United States. And it will continue. It will not get better. Downhill from here on out. Unless we nationalize the Federal Reserve, lock up the criminals who own it, cancel the debt, which will then bankrupt the Illuminati, which is exactly what we ought to do, print constitutional money, which cannot be usurped, which cannot lead to our destruction, and go back to what we're supposed to do, and quit contracting for benefits. We're escaping from the laws of nature, and there's a terrible consequence for that.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible consequence. We have to function within the laws of nature. You can't contract for somebody else to keep you alive. You have to be responsible within your life to keep yourself alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't do it, then you have to die. That's the law of nature. You see. Kennedy also did a lot of other things. I mean, he was a believer in the Bible. These men who are bringing about the New World Order don't believe in the God of the Bible. They believe in the God of light, Lucifer, the angel of light, who was flung down to the earth and became the Lord of the world.
Yep.
That's their God. That's why everything they do goes against what people know to be the right thing to do. They believe that man was held prisoner by a vindictive, cruel God named Jehovah in the Garden of Eden. And that Lucifer, through his agent Satan, set man free from the bonds of ignorance to which he was chained to the Garden of Eden, and thus brought the gift of intellect, wisdom, to man, and thus is the true benevolent God. And man, with his intellect and his wisdom and his knowledge, will create technology which will elevate man to the position of God. And all this is allegorical. Don't take the story literally, you see, because it's all allegorical. They believe that intellect, reason, is the light, is the true God, is what makes man God. And I'm not going to debate the right and wrong,
So I'm going to stop right there because it's been already an hour and a half, and you can go back and watch this interview if you want to see the rest of it. It's on the internet. But what he was ending on goes back to the garden, the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which we've been discussing. So it all ties together. Everything comes full circle. And the end is revealed right out of the beginning. So I hope this just kind of, seems like most of you knew a lot of this information. I was actually happy to see that most of you had already kind of done your homework, or you had already heard about this, which I think a lot of people have, particularly in the believing community. We kind of sort of talk about these things. But I was glad to see that a lot of you were like on point with a lot of the questions that I was, or the topics that I was bringing up. So, but I'm sure that there's a lot of you that didn't know any of it, or maybe you just knew some of it. And I just wanted to open your eyes and make sure that you are, like Yeshua said, staying as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves, particularly in these last days, because we need to be aware and we need to be educated, and we cannot be asleep. We don't want to be sleeping and slumbering and just, it's very easy to get caught up in the world. It's very easy to get caught up in busyness. But take time. Take time to be in your word and stay awake. And I don't just mean awake, I mean spiritually awake. Take the time to stay spiritually awake and wise. I'm going to go ahead and end this now, since it's been about over an hour and a half. But like I said, you can go online. I'll post it on the page if you want to watch the rest of the interview. But I just thought this was a good time, since yesterday was 9/11. And I'm really, 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 really excited, because next Shabbat is Rosh Hashanah Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets. And we'll be starting the fall feasts, which have to do with the Lord's return, actually. So I hope that you'll join me next Saturday for the first feast day. I don't want to forget, though, I do have 3 books. I have 3 books on the feast days that I'll be giving away. I'll be giving away 1 book each feast day. But usually you don't have to be present for the video to be entered to win for the book. But because I believe that the feast days are so important, and I really, really, really want you to be a part of it, I'm only gonna give them away to people who are present. So if you're here with me next Shabbat for the Feast of Trumpets, like I said, I have 1 book for each feast day. I have 3 books that are on the feast days. It explains all the feast days for those of you who are not familiar with them and would like to start celebrating them and would like to become more familiar with them. It has the spring feast, the fall feast, and Shabbat. And it breaks it down very simply for you so that you know what they mean and how they tie in with Yeshua, the Messiah, and their prophetic parallels as well. So I'm excited about that. Hope to see you next Shabbat. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it, sort of awoken your senses, so to speak, and opened your spiritual eyes to certain things. I love you. God bless you. And Shabbat Shalom.